Here is a week 1 guide for the Doom of Mocha. First things first, let's go over the gear setup. I know I'm in max gear and you're clicking on a guide and you're like, I don't have max gear. In my defense, Doom of Mocha is very much intended to be an endgame boss, and there are a few downgrades that you could do. But you know what? The best thing is Elite Void is very viable here. So first things first, Elite Void is viable. If you have Missouri, you can use that too. Missouri is better DPS for the early waves 1 through 4 and is a tankier option. Elite Void is the best DPS for waves 5 through 8 during the car phase, which I will get into more later. If you have a Twisted Bow, use Amethyst or Dragon Arrows. You know, I'm an Iron Man, so I'm using Amethyst Arrows. If you don't have a Twisted Bow, definitely use the Scorching Bow. I would say the Scorching Bow is the most crucial item to have here. And if you're going to be using the Scorching Bow, definitely be in Elite Void rather than Missouri. You're going to be primarily ranging this boss, but you will need other weaponry, other styles. So in our inventory, we have a Kodai, but you can use any autocast one as long as you're capable of using Demon Bane spells. We also have an Emberlight for a Demon Bane melee weapon. And then we also have a couple extra switches here, melee switches, and a Zerite crossbow for spec. If you don't have a ZCB, you can also use a Crystal Halberd or possibly some claws. Oh, and talking about spec weapons, I'm also utilizing Lightbearer to regen spec, as well as bring my rune pouch for death charge. So in the rune pouch, we're going to have runes for death charge and our Demon Bane spells. Notice no thralls though. We are not utilizing thralls because the boss has a mechanic where there's going to be more poison acid tiles the more hit splats you do, and thralls will count as hit splats as well. As for the rest of our inventory, we have a whole bunch of brews and restores, ranging potions, and an anti-venom potion of some sorts. Alternatively, if you're going to be wearing Missouri or like any non-void armor, I guess you can wear a Serp Helm as well. We're going to start going over some of the basic mechanics of the boss. First and foremost, I highly advise standing away from the boss. You're going to be ranging this boss, and the boss can melee you pretty hard. There's going to be red projectiles, meaning protect melee, green projectiles, protect range, and blue projectiles, protecting mage. There are going to be boulder attacks, and they're color-coded. So if it's a blue boulder that gets thrown out, you will know that it's an incoming mage attack. And then if it's a brown boulder, you'll know that it's a range attack coming. The boulder will be thrown in the air, and once the boulder pops, you then have to move because a rock will appear under you. And that will not only knock you out and stall you a little bit, but it will definitely deal damage. When the boulder breaks, there's also going to be other tiles around you that might be considered dangerous tiles. So just be mindful of where you're dodging to. During wave 1, the boulder will only do one singular attack. So if it's a brown boulder, you just turn on Prey Range. If it's a mage, if it's a blue boulder, you turn on Prey Mage. Keep in mind when the boulder is thrown out and it pops, your overhead will get disabled, so you have to manually turn it back on. On wave 2, 2 attacks will occur, and it will always alternate. So if it's a brown boulder, it will be range first, and then you have to flick to mage. And if it's a blue boulder, vice versa. On wave 3, it's the same as wave 2, but perhaps a little bit faster. On wave 4, it's 3 attacks, and with 3 attacks, again, if it's a blue boulder, it'll be mage first, but what you're going to have to do is mage, range, mage, or vice versa, range, mage, range. On wave 5, it's going to be the same thing as wave 4, but faster. On wave 6, same thing, but faster. And then when you get to wave 7, it's going to be significantly faster. I recommend during wave 7 that as soon as the boulder pops, you have to be on it. You have to prepare yourself for that because the jump from 6 to 7 is pretty different. It's a lot faster. Wave 8 is when it gets crazy and it throws out 2 boulders. They're going to pop back to back and you're going to have to dodge 2 rocks that appear under you. And then there's going to be 2 sets of the 3 attacks. So you're going to have to prayer flick against 6 attacks. What I will say about the 2 boulders on wave 8 though, is that the 2 boulders will always be the same color. So really, you can go range, mage, range, range, and that 3rd and 4th attack, you kind of have some time to breathe there. Another mechanic is the Shockwave Attack. Depending on your DPS, this usually occurs nearing the end of the wave. Volatile Earth, or these things that kind of look like trees, so we're going to be calling them trees, they will spawn. Hitting 2 trees will create an orb. The orb will spawn at the second tree that you hit and path its way to the first tree that you hit. The pathing doesn't quite work like player movement. In fact, it's the opposite. It'll move diagonally first and then straight, whereas your player movement will path straight first and then diagonally. As soon as the trees spawn, you have a 20 tick window before the boss will do a Shockwave Attack. In order to avoid the Shockwave Attack, you must be in the orb. You'll know you're in the orb if your character is highlighted. During waves 1 and 2, there's going to be 1 Shockwave Attack, and during waves 3 and 4, there's going to be 2 attacks back to back. Waves 5 and 6 will do 3 attacks back to back. Wave 7 will do 4 attacks back to back, and wave 8 and beyond, it will do 5 attacks. Because of multiple attacks, it's important to time when to trigger the orb. Starting on wave 3, there is a shield phase, which is the blue bar indicated over the boss. This triggers when the boss is at 75% or below, I believe. During this phase, there's going to be a yellow bar as well, and that yellow bar is going to be charging up. In order to break the yellow bar, you must use a Demon Bane weapon, so that like your Scorching Bow, your Ember Light, or your Demon Bane spells. During this phase, I highly recommend using the Scorching Bow to break the yellow bar charge up. Basically, if the yellow bar gets to full, you're going to get laser beams, and that is more or less a one-shot mechanic. You can live through it in the early waves, but after a certain point in the later waves, it deals 99 damage, which you can also outlive it if you're above 99 health, but obviously this is a mechanic you want to avoid as best as possible. Sometimes the boss will protect range and mage and have another yellow bar on it charging up. This requires you to melee the boss. During this sequence, your melee hit will have an added hit splat dealing a certain damage, and this is based on your melee strength bonus in increments of 5. This is known as the melee punish, and that's why some people bring the scythe as well as multiple melee armor switches to increase their melee strength. Multi-hit splat weapons in particular are really good. The scythe has 3 hit splats when you swing it, so it could deal a lot of damage. I wouldn't concern yourself too much with this though, especially bringing too many switches at first until you're more comfortable with the boss as a whole. In fact, people who are trying to get deep runs, they avoid using strong multi-hit splat weapons like the scythe, just to deal with the poison acid tiles a bit better. So talking about the poison acid tiles, this starts occurring at wave 3, so you're free from it on the first 2 waves. But starting at wave 3, rag tiles will persist up to 5, so you really have to be careful. Like on waves 4 and 5, you'll have less and less room to work with. However, once you get to wave 6, the room cleans itself. But keep in mind, 6, 7, and 8, it won't reset, so you'll have to deal with the poison tiles on 7 and 8 when it gets a little bit more hectic. Another mechanic is the larvae. They're going to periodically spawn and make their way to the boss. In the early waves, they move pretty slowly and they slightly speed up as you get later and later on in the waves. If they reach the boss, they deal damage to you and they heal the boss. Demon Bane weapons will one-shot them, that's why we have the Ember Light, but keep in mind you don't actually have to have an Ember Light. You could use the Dark Light, like that works as well. It will still one-shot them. And they don't have a weapon cooldown, so essentially it's 0 tick, you can just spam it. Whenever you're meleeing the larvae, I highly recommend instantly stepping back. That's because once you deal damage to the larvae, they will do a little bit of an AoE damage upon their death. So definitely step back when meleeing. And if you have the option to, perhaps even just range them or mage them instead. In the early waves, 1 through 3, sometimes they might have like 1 protection prayer, so you have to be a little bit more mindful. Like sometimes you won't be able to melee them, or sometimes you won't be able to range them. And then from waves 4 through 8, they will always have 2 protection prayers, and they'll be color-coded, so it's going to be very obvious which attack style you have to use. For example, there's going to be a red larva, and obviously you're going to have to melee that one. Larvae will spawn during the shield phase as well, and you can purposely let them close to the boss and then pop them there. This will deal 100 damage to the shield. This is actually the best DPS and how you can handle the shield phase quickly. The AoE damage I mentioned earlier, during the shield phase you won't take damage when you're popping them near the boss, so take advantage of that. However, I would still say you should build the habit of stepping back, because as soon as the shield phase ends, if you're in melee range of the boss will instantly melee you, and it can hit pretty hard. The next mechanic introduced is starting on wave 5 and beyond. After the shield phase, the boss will turn into a car. Yes, I said that. The boss will turn into a car, a tractor, whatever you want to call it. But basically during this phase, an eye or a yellow dot will appear, and this indicates where the boss will be dashing to. The boss will target based on the 8 compass directions. So for example, it could dash north, it could dash east, but it can also dash northeast, a diagonal. So make sure when you see this, you clear away from the path. Keep in mind the boss is pretty big. I think it's like a 5x5, so you really have to, I think, like run 2 tiles. During wave 5, the boss will do this dash attack twice, and during wave 6 and beyond, the boss will dash 3 times. And it will also periodically send auto attacks that are mage, range, or melee. During wave 6 and beyond, the boss will do a slam attack after the dash. In order to avoid the damage from the slam, you have to hide behind the rocks that are spewed across the room. You do have to be a little careful and maybe a little bit strategic during this. Rocks protected by other rocks will not be destroyed. Keep in mind you have to hide behind the rocks 3 times during this phase, so you got to keep some rocks alive. And also keep in mind when the boss dashes, it will destroy any rocks that are in its path. We've gone over the mechanics, so here are some general tips. You have more time than you think during waves 1 through 4. The attacks really are quite slow if you just focus on one thing at a time. Always take note of the color of the boulders so you know what to pray first. Prioritize dodging the boulder shrapnel, then turning on your prayers. A boulder will always be thrown during the melee punish. During this, I highly recommend going for the melee first and then immediately stepping back to handle the boulder attack. It's not the end of your run if Larvae reach the boss, as long as you're not sitting incredibly low HP. So, you know, if a lot of things are going on, it's really not too bad to let one leak in. Sound cues are a great way to time your prayer flicks while you focus on the other mechanics. Change prayers when you hear the attacks hit your character. The shield phase is a great time to heal up, as most of the shield phase DPS relies on the larvae popping for 100 damage each, rather than your actual hits. When brewing though, be mindful of losing your autocast on the magic larvae. This can be slightly counteracted if you simply use a lower Demon Bane spell. Tanking a car slam or a shockwave attack isn't actually that punishing, as long as you keep your health high. They still do a decent amount of damage, so obviously don't just straight up ignore the mechanic, but if you're in a bad spot, or maybe you messed up or something, it's not too bad. But obviously don't tank 3 to 4 hits in a row, and when I'm saying this, I just mean simply don't panic if you do have to tank a hit or 2. This sort of goes hand in hand with what I just said, but also can be applied in other situations. Bringing a combo E or 2 can save you, especially in the later waves when a lot of incoming damage could happen. At least at first, avoid trying to DPS and simply stay in the orb. Turn your run energy off or use control walking to stay in the orb, as you can easily outrun the orb. When you do get more comfortable being able to DPS while in the orb, make sure to run 1 tile afterwards to catch back up. When dealing with the boulder attack while in the orb, click further along the path, ideally walking, and then focus on your prayers. Getting prayers wrong is more punishing than tanking a shockwave attack. This goes well with the previous thing I said before, but this is why you want to have the orb pathing as straight as possible. Try to find 2 trees that are roughly in a straight line. Well, that's all I have to say about this boss for now. I'm currently recording this on a Tuesday, the week after the boss came out on a Wednesday, so it hasn't even been a full week yet. But in just this first week, there has been a lot of tech introduced, people figuring things out, and Jagex also changing and adjusting some things because certain things might be considered bugs that they don't want to allow. So I didn't really include any tech in this video, just a simple guide and some tips and tricks to do the boss without any tile markers or any crazy plugins, really. One more thing before we close this video. Here's my collection log so far. As soon as I'm done editing this video, I'm going to continue to run some more. I do have a pretty crazy log, and I've just been doing the boss exactly how I've shown in this video. And I'm going to continue doing that. It's a lot of fun.